what we decided to do, just so you understand why we chose the keynotes we did. We wanted someone from the company side and someone from the inventing group side of two incredibly successful companies and inventing groups. And Goliath, as I'm sure you picked up from the presentation, is one of the fastest growing game companies in the world. And from the inventing side, we had Daniel Kushner, who is amazing in so many different ways, in Bop-It, Perplexus, all sorts of things. And if you go to his offices in San Francisco, they're incredible. I mean, you just feel the energy when you walk in. And Dan also works with kids. He works with young inventors. He bikes 20 miles each way to work. And he's incredible. And it's exciting for us to have him here today. So I give you Dan.
First of all, I have an e-bike. Has a motor on it, but it is still. All right, well, thank you. And I want to say I was here to see Adi speak. He's one of my heroes. And a lot of what I have to say actually sort of echoes it in a way. So, sorry for the delay on all this technology, but it only took 3 of us to get that to show up. And yes, prologue is, actually I'm just going to play you a couple videos first, and then we'll see what happens, what they play. We got this, here's the microphone.
No, I did. You don't know what you're talking about, you butthead. I smiled. Gosh, this thing doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, that's you're really proud of your toy when everybody makes fun of it, but there must be something that says it's a good product, right? You know, that Bop-It was fun. Let's see.
Smack it, whack it, work it, arc it, twist it, smack it, arc it, twist it, smack it, work it, whack it, arc it, twist it, smack it, work it, whack it, arc it, twist it, smack it, work it, whack it, arc it, arc it, twist it, anymore, whack it. I can't take it anymore.
So I decided that the story of Bop-It, I would retitle World's Most Annoying Game. I think it's official. And I can now say that's what I invented, the world's most annoying game. I've trademarked that. Actually, what I'm going to do is tell you the story, because there's a lot that I learned from it, and I hope that I can share with you. As you'll find out later, how everything had to be just right, spelled wrongly, but it is right. So the beginning of the story, in 1990, I'm an industrial designer, so very creatively named my company Klitzner Industrial Design. Later figured out that actually spelled kid. And so the destiny of this story was set, that I would be doing things. I am in San Francisco. I do bike over that bridge on an e-bike, and my office is somewhere in, oh, you can't see the mouse. It's over in a little studio at the base of Market. I have the players. We design things with a lot of music, so I think we've come out with about 4 or 5 different guitar-based games or musical games. But this is myself, Brian and Gary, and at the beginning of this story, Brian was an intern. I was just a small design office, and I started to do some games and toys, which I love, specifically games. Now, this is we've licensed over 250 games and toys over the last 20 years. How would you like to see all of them at once? Okay, go, if this works. That's the way you should see commercials, just see like 6 or 7 at a time. No, there's been a lot of action. What you'll see that's sort of common in the games that we do is sort of industrial design, physical interaction with with almost in a three-dimensional way. You know, because of the industrial design background, although we like games, they're more like toys that we say animate people. A toy that animates a person versus, you know, when a person animates the toy, that's more like a Barbie or something like that. You know, we don't do that. We do things that make you move. And one of the, let's see, this is stuck a little. There we go. So one of the first game that I actually licensed to Hasbro, which was then Milton Bradley, was called Go-Go Worms. Now I know there's probably 2 people who might remember that. Oh, wow, this is, well, Mike Hurdle doesn't count. But this is something I found on YouTube, if you don't know it.
It's Go-Go Worms! Follow the dough, make your worms go! But if the dice comes up, Mr. Go!
I think cut off, then still in their ring.
First for the pretty swings!
Yay! So that was sort of my first product, and it got me to know the people at Milton Bradley. And one of the guys, Bill Dorman, who some of you know in the room, was someone who I actually say, like Adi, someone who really knows a good game when they see it. And he had, because of this game, he called me when he was coming to California and said he was going to be in Los Angeles. Is there any way that I could meet with him to show him some games? Or he actually said it was too bad that he couldn't meet with me. And I said, well, I'll fly down to Los Angeles. I'd never flown anywhere to see someone like that before, but I knew he was special, and I really wanted to show him the games that I had. So it's, you know, important to show your games to the right person who will really get it. But I didn't do just that. I actually found out which hotel he was in and got a room there and set up my presentation before, the night before, invited him to breakfast rather than going to his room, having all my stuff, you know, trying to set it up quickly. Only had an hour with him. So I was really well prepared, and I showed him these games. And the one game that, the one thing that I showed him was a game that later became Bop It. I'm going to go back, though, that before that, 1993, was actually the birth of Bop It. I'm going backwards a little. And so here it is. You have to have the music of 2001. Boom, boom, boom. You got the drums. It's rising up, and oops. Why is it a pizza remote? That is the birth of Bop It in a funny way. So now this you'll find out why. So this product was going to be huge, right? It's a remote control that looks like a piece of pizza. It's going to be big. So actually, it was part of a line of remotes. This was an idea of games of sound effects and things in remote controls, and the idea was actually licensed by none other than MGA, which was Isaac Larian, who later did Bratz and all those things. And so he rejected. He said, "I love everything but the hammer." And we were saying that he loved the pizza. So luckily, he loved this pizza remote. The hammer was this one on the left there, which is when you it was called the channel bopper. When you bopped one direction, it went the channel down. When you bopped the other direction, the channel went up. So you could kind of like slam your hammer on the counter and change channels. He didn't like that one. So it was sitting on my desk. I liked the little model of it, and when someone from Tiger Toys had called and they said, you know, we're looking for new LCD games. I said, oh, I could take that hammer and put an LCD in it, and then it would be a new type of LCD game. After much trial and error, it turned out that you couldn't really see the LCD while you were hammering, as you can imagine. So through a lot of different versions of it, but I like this physical action, this idea that you watched what the kid was doing, not the toy. You animated the person. So it took the LCD out and worked with gameplay until it eventually became Bop It, being that it was the channel bopper. Now, I think a few suggestions after many meetings, many rejections. The suggestion, well, maybe it's not a TV remote. I'm like, what? What a stupid idea. Of course it's got to be a TV remote. Well, maybe it's not. So this is actually the pitch that was made to Bill Dorman. The video of me 20 years ago. Almost. You need the
twist it or bop it as fast as you can without getting caught. So here's our demo. Ready?
That's a foam core hammer. The magic of video.
Oh, so I blew it.
Did you notice what sound effect was at the end of that? Yeah. So 20 years later, Homer Simpson actually said that to a bop it being played. They didn't know. So at the
What was it?
well, dope. It was Homer Simpson going dope, and that was because when this came out, that had just come out. Simpsons had just, and we thought that was everyone was saying dope, so we put that at the end of this, and that stuck in a weird way. So this was it. It was this funky thing, and when Bill saw it, he said, you know, we're not doing things like this, but we should. Which is rare. Like, usually you hear someone say, we're not doing things like this, please go away. And so the thing was, he kind of recognized and brought it in, was the champion of this product, along with a lot of other people. So it was launched, not looking like that though. Of course, if you know the product, the first one was designed to look like this. There's some interesting things about it. If you look at the original hammer, similar color and shape, there you can kind of see the DNA from it. But if you look at a bop it, there's a bop on two sides of it. And that made it, that's because it used to be a hammer. So a hammer had two sides. Even though it got flattened, they left the bop on both sides. And that turned out to be a very important thing to make it social. It wasn't just one person, you could play it with two, you could pass it. The other thing that was a fluke here was that we only had 6 seconds of sound in it. Bop it, pull it, twist it, there's the sound effects. Oh, there's a half second of sound left. And what do you do with that half second of sound? I said, oh, maybe we put in pass it. Because, that fits in a half a second. And it turned out that without that pass it, it would never, that became a big social game. It wasn't just like an LCD game that you would play by yourself. It became very social. So these things all, by some accident, some luck, some just paying attention to what works, are sort of how this became. They called, said, this is doing incredible. What do we do to follow it up? Can we do some smaller ones? And said, no, let's do a bigger one. That's where this product came. So we kind of knew that this principle of making you animate people could be expanded to a much, to more verbs. And so that's how this came out. It would cost more than the original, and it outsold the original, because I think people recognize when there's value that they can see. And Bop It is the kind of product where you can really see what you're getting. Bop It versus Simon. I think, Simon was sort of the first of this type of game. What's interesting is that they're completely different. And not that I was touchy when someone would say, oh, it's like Simon. I'd say, no, it's not at all like Simon. No. Simon is a linear thing, It's a memorization of numbers that you touch, and it's very flat. A Bop It is a three-dimensional experience, something that makes everything you do in a different plane. So, as luck would have it, or our experience, we actually just reinvented Simon. So now I get to say, yeah, we did that too. But it's important to know the difference in gameplay. One is, they're both great games, but what is it that makes each of them lasting? And for Bop It, it's this, this three-dimensional experience. So 15 years later, it's still going. It's been re-envisioned and reinvented. We've been involved, compared to the first foam core mock-up, we've done in my office lots and lots of prototypes and lots of things that we now know how to do that we didn't know how to do before. We just knew how to do a video and dub some sound in. Over 20 million units to date. We've done the app. We've actually done that in our office. If you've played it, it's got incredible physical interaction, because on iPhone you can do that. We've built giant, if you come to my office, you can play the giant Bop It. It's a table that you can run around. The experience scales up quite well. And that was actually used to do the game show. There's a, oops, we'll move on. The game show, the Boptagon, if you've ever seen, there's a family game night show, and they based it off of this thing in our office, which was how to make a Bop It giant. So then the next thing was about a year ago, a few years ago, we always had the idea of combining Tetris and Bop It.
Bop it, click it, bop it.
So this is what we came up with. Notice this was Bop It Tetris, which just came out this year. This is a stop motion video of pieces of paper on 2 pieces of foam core that we did in an hour. And the lesson being that this is an idea I had for a number of years, never knew how to prototype it, and one day said, why don't we just do it stop motion? So instead of using all this technology, just anything you have that'll convey a concept, and maybe we call this the screen test, something that you can watch it on video. Look how happy they are.
Tetris Twist.
So we called it Tetris Twist. We didn't necessarily know if it would be a Bop It product, but it did perfectly combine the two things. We always thought Tetris had that relentless gameplay of turning and twisting physical shapes, and Bop It was sort of an audio version of that, and just had on a piece of paper, Tetris, Bop It, what is it? And for about 5 years, kind of looked at it, and one day went into the shop, and literally in about an hour, we made that model, tested it on video, and said, it looks so good, let's build one. And of course, it took a long time to build a real one. That's what this was. Probably took about 6 months to work it out and program it and make, this is our original prototype, which takes the shape on one side, and this is a version where you're actually blowing up the other side.
117.
It turned into this product, which is, this commercial is out now, I think. Oops.
New Bop It Tetris. Twist, slam, score to win.
So you can see this all came from a little stop motion video. Of course, in their commercial, you can't tell what's going on, but but I don't know. We don't know. We just invent it. But that's just kind of showing that even though it's been 15 years, that the original way of showing a Bop It on a piece of foam core and just getting the idea across was more important than doing a really slick prototype. Same thing happened with Bop It Tetris. It just happened to be the way to express it. But not that everything you invent should be that way. But one thing is look at it on simulate it any way you can, look at it on a video and see if it looks good before you invest time in it. It'll tell you. So one of the things that I wanted to share is sort of what Adi was saying about what have you learned, kind of have a little acronym called RIGHT. If you're going to pitch a product, everything has to be right. With Bop It, everything just happened to be right. I didn't know it at the time, but I later have learned how it came out. If you have an idea, you sort of think that's it. The idea is everything, right? You've got a great idea. I've got to pitch it to someone. But it turns out if you take your idea and think of it as a pedestal that you're putting your product on, that turns out to be kind of unstable, right? It's just one leg. It's not just about the idea. Your idea will, look at this great animation, fall off. So RIT is, there's 4 things. The idea is just one of them. And what we like to look at is you have relationship, idea, timing, and we call execution. And if you look at any one product, you can sometimes use these as sort of a guideline of either why it failed or maybe what you need to do if is it ready yet? Is it right to be shown? Look at that. So these are the 4 legs. Look how much more stable that is. But that's it. No. So what's interesting is if you think about what happens if you're looking at something and say, well, I've got this great idea, but I don't know who to show it to. The relationships I have are not that good. Oh, someone did something like it last year. I better, maybe I should wait on it, or, I'm not conveying the idea very well, then maybe the table looks like that. If you have, I know this is at the right company, it's a great idea, you know, it's perfect timing, then why didn't it sell? This is usually the one where people say, oh, I thought of that. They see an idea someone else did, and we call this the table of pain, because you're wondering why, if you had the same idea, yours didn't sell and the other person's did. And I think if you might look back on it and realize you had everything right except for maybe the final execution, how that could be anything from, you know, the way it looked to just nuances in the play. So sort of make sure your table is nice and stable. A timing one would be, well, that's actually painful as well. You know, you were 2 days late. They say, oh, we just bought that from someone else. So you can't help that, but you can help your timing. If you have a good relationship, if you understand who you're pitching something to, you can definitely decide whether it's a good time or not to walk in the door with something. And you know, sometimes you say, well, what does this look like? This looks like you're in the right place. You've got a beautiful model. It's, you know, they said they wanted monkeys, and you've got a monkey, so you're in good shape, except it's just not a very good idea. And sometimes you can spend a lot of time and money on a prototype, and you really haven't fleshed out the idea well enough yet. So I think just use these as sort of, if it's right, it happens to be, like with Bop It, it was, I walked in the door with the right idea. I had a relationship with a company that I really cared about that particular person. I knew he was the right guy to pitch it to. You know, the timing was, they hadn't done anything like that in a while, but they should have. That's what he said. Well, I kind of knew that from looking at their line. They didn't have anything like it, so it was a good product was pitched there. And I'd say execution was, even though it later, you know, wasn't a hammer, that it was well communicated in a very simple way. So the moral of the story is what? Is basically, you never know when a slice of pizza may change your life. I don't know, what's the moral of the story? In that one, I think this is that the rejection, you know, as funny as this is, use it as the one that was rejected was the one that became this huge hit. And so if I hadn't had this, you know, silly pizza, he might have picked the hammer, and that would have turned into some obscure remote control and never have become Bop It. Knowing that there's all these stories people have of the thing that got rejected, got simplified, you know, you look, was it right or not? You might look back with Bop It, it was something that had to be redone a few times, reimagined, but because it was rejected, it became better. Because it only had 6 seconds of sound, we had to choose carefully, and you know, it had the right thing added. I think you just pay attention to that stuff. But you know, you never know when a rejection is the right thing for the path of your product.